Okay, hello everybody. How you guys doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. Today is August 21st. What's happening? So, lots of things to talk about today in the world. Um, I guess Afghanistan. That's excuse me. That is the biggest news happening right now in the world, essentially. And yeah, the shit is hitting the fan over there. Right. Which is bad news for everybody. I guess that's pretty bad stuff. So, we're gonna have a lot to talk about that today. Um, but let's go ahead and jump into what we've got going here. Um, Before we start, this is illustration that we have been working on for the last couple streams. The Oompa Loompas invading the Smurf village. And I think it's coming along. It's kind of cool sometimes to look back over the streams and see like the progression of how these pieces go, but I think it looks okay. I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. Anyway, yeah, man. So very, very bad stuff going on in Afghanistan right now. So just sort of a quick recap of what I'm sure you've all been paying attention to the news and all that stuff. But oh wait a minute, hang on, I have to open my notes here. Let me know by the way if you have trouble. Lewis the Hedgehog, how you doing? Let me know by the way if you have trouble hearing me. I set up a mic, so hopefully this will cut down on all the weird car noises and like dogs barking and neighbors stomping around and stuff like that we always get during my streams. Hopefully this will make this a little easier to hear me. But if you can't hear me, please let me know because I can always go back to the old mic, the old crappy mic that I had before. Anyway, so Afghanistan is finally over with. Finally, it is America's longest war. Has been going since October of 2001. A month after the 9/11 attacks, right? And has generally been a bad idea since the very beginning. So Afghanistan is sort of notorious for um, being the place where empires die. The British Empire had a protracted campaign in Afghanistan in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Didn't work out too well for them. Of course, the Soviets were there too for quite some time, bled them dry, and contributed to the collapse of the Soviet Union. And since America's so smart, we decided to do the exact same thing and just spent 20 years and quite possibly trillions upon trillions of dollars doing the exact same thing that the Soviets and the British did. That is basically just wasting lots of time and money and hastening the decline of American hegemony and global power, right? And the thing is, it's not like we didn't know this was going to happen. This was a bad idea all around. Everybody kind of knew. Even way back then, people were saying that this was a bad idea, that we shouldn't be getting down in this quagmire, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But a funny thing happens when Americans get pissed and they want to go to war. All logic kind of flies out the window, and they just don't listen to logic or reason or the benefit of past experience because, America is a very warlike country. I don't know if anybody has noticed that out there, but essentially every 20 years for the past 200 years, we get ourselves involved in some kind of war, you know. Um, and Whether that's like, a major big war or just some police action somewhere or invading some small little country to prop up business interests or whatever. Just seems like there really is very few periods in American history where there isn't a war going on of some kind, right? Which was funny because in the 90s, the 80s and 90s, we actually had a somewhat protracted era of peace. I mean, there were small little things like Grenada and, Panama, stuff like that, and then Eastern Europe. But there weren't this sort of protracted, huge wars, World War II kind of, you know what I mean? And then we had the Gulf War, right, which lasted all of like, 90 days or something like that and resulted in like, 87 Americans dying. Of course, there were roughly 100,000 Iraqis died in that war. We always forget to mention them. But when you ever see the official tally for the Iraq War, it's like, oh, American casualties 87, Iraqis 100,000 or something like that. It was like some ridiculously like disproportionate number. But we had generally a peaceful time. And then suddenly 9/11 happens, and it's sort of like, the United States like had this bloodlust. I remember it quite well. I remember also the run up to the war, there were protests. But the thing is, the Afghan war was a little bit different from the Iraq war. People were pissed back in, you know, after 9/11. People took 9/11 very, very seriously. People were very scared. There was a uh, major jump in bigotry and hate crimes towards Middle Eastern people, people of Arab descent, people of Middle Eastern descent. Just the thing is, it was like just anybody who looked vaguely Middle Eastern. That's another thing about bigotry is that it's not selective. So I remember seeing things where people who were, for example, Hindus or Sikhs were getting, you know, assaulted and stuff like that. In fact, there was a mass shooter that went into a Sikh temple roughly around 2005 or so. The Sikh temple massacre. Guy shows up at a Sikh temple, blows away a bunch of people because he couldn't tell the difference between Sikhs and Muslims because, when it comes to hatred and, you know, racism and bigotry, you don't get the smartest people in the bunch, right? But anyway, getting back to Afghanistan, um, the problem with it, yeah, seeing your question there, Lewis, did we really lose or did we stay there too long? Osama bin Laden is dead, and we were trying to get people out, so it was not for nothing, right? That's the $6 million question: is what the hell went wrong, right? One could say the invasion was justified. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the stream there. But I want to kind of go over a little bit of the history of basically what happened in Afghanistan, right? Essentially, it was, you know, because people, you got to remember, right? Not the Taliban is not the same thing as Al Qaeda. They're not the same thing. Al Qaeda is a non-governmental terrorist group, right? That was being sheltered in Afghanistan. Right. So you could say maybe they were allies, maybe the Taliban government was supporting them, something like that. Not really. They were essentially just allowing them to stay in their territory. And one thing that you don't really get reported a lot nowadays is that after 9/11, the Taliban actually offered to turn Osama bin Laden over. And what it was is they wanted to see the evidence that he did it, right? Which, contrary to proper belief, to popular conspiracy theory belief, there is a ton of evidence, right, that Al Qaeda was behind 9/11. You know, despite what Alex Jones and the loose change people will tell you, tons of evidence, okay, came out that Al Qaeda planned it and all that stuff. I mean, they have 9/11 down to who the people on the plane were, where they came from, when they entered the country, all this other shit. So it's like, don't listen to any of that baloney when you get people like Alex Jones and 9/11 truthers and all that. telling you that it was like a false flag and blah blah blah. That's all BS. We could probably do an entire stream just on 9/11. In fact, we probably should. That would be a good one. 9/11 conspiracy theories, because it's going to be relevant now because we're talking about Afghanistan, right? Um, so that's, they knew exactly who he was. The thing is that the Bush people were not interested in negotiating. They basically said, turn them over or we're invading, right? The thing is, they wanted to invade. Okay. They were, and part of that you could say, like, the big thing on the left when it comes to war like this is they say the military industrial complex. Like, the military industrial complex wanted to make money. So yeah, we're going to start a war. And, yes, it would be naive to say that that is not part of it, that that was not an influence on the Bush administration, especially since they had lots of ties to, um, defense contractors, things like Halliburton. Dick Cheney is the former fucking president of Halliburton or whatever, or vice president, something like that. And then he gives them no big contracts, right? After the when the war starts, like, and then like personally enriches himself by like made something like $8 million, like himself personally. Like, no, that it is very relevant. That's a very relevant criticism, but that's not the only reason, you know. It's like that's one of the super major reasons, but it's not the only reason. The other reason is that people wanted fucking revenge. Okay. In this country. They did. People wanted to go kill, somebody, right? I'm sure if you guys were around back then, you remember it quite well. People were pissed off. There was like hate crimes and shit against, like people were angry. They wanted, and they saw Osama bin Laden. This is the guy who did it. Let's fucking go get him. Right. So the Afghanistan invasion had, overwhelming public support. You know, that's the other thing. And yes, even then there was some voices who spoke against that, but very, very small. There was only like one congresswoman, Senator Barbara Lee, was the only one who voted against invading Afghanistan. So it was like they had the mandate to do it. Like a lot of the things that people on the anti-war left like to say is that nobody likes war and that, et cetera, et cetera. And war is always a thing that we're tricked into or something. Not in this case, not in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, people were begging, and it was, yeah, yeah. I mean, how much of that could you say is because of a media machine that backs up, um, that wanted a war to benefit, you know, uh, corporations, shit like that. I mean, you can always make those arguments, and you would be right, but the general public sentiment, one way or the other, was definitely there. The problem is that it seemed like from the very beginning they didn't take Afghanistan seriously, right? The war really was over a while ago, as far as like meeting the original mission objectives, right? So, for example, if your mission objective was to destroy Al Qaeda, that they accomplished that years ago, you know, even before Osama bin Laden finally like was killed. Excuse me. Right. The fact is that in December of 2001. Sorry for the loud trucks driving by. I'm hoping that my microphone here is filtering some of that out. Um, the thing is, in December of 2001, they had Osama bin Laden basically fucking, cornered in Tora Bora, right? He was, so Tora Bora is a very mountainous region up, in between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And you know, they had him cornered there, and basically they were closing in. And the problem was that the Al Qaeda fighters had the fucking Marines there, I think who they were, had them outnumbered, and so they didn't want to advance until they got some backup, and reinforcements never came. And people were sitting there. So what they were doing is they were just hitting like, because apparently Osama bin Laden was in this sort of like cave complex on the border there, and they were listening to his radio chatter, and they could tell that he was getting desperate, and he was like, this is it. They're coming. We're not going to be able to stop them. Blah blah blah. Right. And so they were like, dude, he's scared. Let's go get him. But they couldn't. They basically were ordered to not proceed until more more troops showed up, and then the troops never came, and then they asked him to like try to cut him off. Apparently they had reinforcements like not that far away, and all they had to do was like paralift him there or whatever, and they just never came. And then they asked him to put mines in front of him so that he couldn't escape, and they wouldn't do that. And basically it was the top brass just decided for whatever reason to let Osama bin Laden go, you know. And it wasn't due to the soldiers on the ground. Essentially, the soldiers were saying like, we can fucking end this shit. Just send us some more people. Stop him from escaping. We can end this. We can stop him. And apparently there were people there, like some of the soldiers wanted to like basically just disobey orders and go get him anyway, because they were pissed, because you remember this is the guy, it's like fucking if you had an opportunity to shoot Hitler, would you do it? You know what I mean? Like kind of like that. And they were like, dude, let's fucking go like get this motherfucker. And they were ordered not to do it. And basically fucking Osama bin Laden got away. Right. The thing is that, you know, everybody then points fingers at each other as to why that didn't happen, right? The truth is if the president himself should have made that decision. George W. Bush should have sat there and made that decision in order to stop him or not. And apparently George W. Bush didn't have any input in this. I don't know, just from what I'm reading. I could be wrong there, but I read a couple articles and this was, decisions made by somebody else. Of course, we don't know if they're just lying about that or whatever, right? But I find that plausible because, if you remember, like for example, when there's like a high profile mission like this, they'll involve the president. Obama was there in the Situation Room when they finally got Osama bin Laden, for example. So I find it like really highly implausible. I mean, I'm not, I don't really know anything about how the military works or whatever. I'm just talking out of my ass. I could be completely wrong. Anybody out there who has the knowledge, please let me know. But I find that just a very convenient excuse that, yeah, oh, some middle manager somewhere made this decision not to reinforce these guys and let them get away. That sounds like bullshit. And this, of course, leads to lots of conspiracy theories and whatnot that, well, they let Osama bin Laden get away on purpose because it's the military industrial complex and wants to make more money, shit like that. And, that may, there may be some merit to that. I mean, they have this huge war going and it was going to be over in 2 months. Maybe fucking Halliburton and Kellogg Brown or whatever they're called and Lockheed Martin, maybe they just hadn't like made enough money yet, and maybe that kind of filtered into that decision making. And it's like, okay, well, give me an alternative. That's the thing. See, when people don't have information, right, they go to conspiracies like that. And I understand that's a conspiracy theory, right? But it's like, give me some alternative information. Tell me like the real reason why they decided to just let his ass go and let Afghanistan turn into a quagmire for fucking 20 years, right? So after that, because the thing is that it didn't seem like the Bush people were very interested in catching him, Osama bin Laden, or ending Afghanistan. They seemed very interested in just letting it go on and on. And then you get things like mission creep, right? So in the beginning, it was all about Al Qaeda, stopping Al Qaeda. They're harboring terrorists that are going to attack us, blah 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 blah, right? So after like a year, they destroy all the fucking terrorists, right? And then it's like, well, now what's the mission? Can we end it? No. And I remember in 2003, 2004, there were people in Afghanistan who were like, okay, let's have some fucking elections. Like I remember reading articles about this. Like there were guys walking around like saying, "Hey, I'm gonna run for president," because okay, the Taliban's gone. You know, great. America, time for you guys to leave. Let's have elections, blah blah blah. Let's get our country up, right? And I remember reading about this and then how basically the Bush people said, no way, we're not going to go for that. We're not. It's going to be done on our terms, right? And they basically prevented popular elections from occurring until I think it was 2006 is when they finally started getting like a government going. Imagine that. Imagine 5 years without a working government, right? It kind of, and then you wonder like, well, why does the government collapse in fucking 24 hours the minute the Americans aren't there to defend them? Maybe it's because people were like, maybe it's because people didn't trust it. Maybe because people thought it was just like people realized it was just a puppet government, you know, and they had no real power, right? So, yeah, it was kind of messed up. So for 20 years it went on, and then of course we get the Iraq War, right, which basically took all the time, money, and resources and troops away. So the problem is, when you fight two wars at the same time, one of them ends up suffering. So of course, Afghanistan just kind of goes into this holding pattern, which is not to say that there wasn't any fighting, because there was, and there has been fighting continuously all the way through in one form or another. It would flare up, it would go down. They'd reduce troops, it would flare up. They'd bring troops back, it would go down, right? And it was basically just this unwinnable quagmire. You know, part of the reason why is because the United States does not engage in intentional genocide, right, anymore. And when I say intentional, what I mean is they don't go and just wipe out entire villages and shit like that on purpose, right? Now, there is still lots of things like collateral damage, and lots of civilians end up getting killed. I think there was something like 50,000, 60,000 Afghans, including civilians. You could call that genocide. But when I say this, is what I mean is the context of my comment here is that in the past, wars in the past, right? Especially when like the further back you go, the more this will be true. Wars in the past were not just against opposing armies, they were against entire populations, right? So, for example, back in, say, ancient times, right, when the pharaoh would invade, I don't know, Judea or some shit like that, or something like that, or they get in a fight, with some other country, fucking Assyrians, whatever, you know what I mean? Way back then, warfare generally meant that your armies would fight, one army would defeat the other, and then the victorious army would go and essentially displace the entire population of another place. So they would go into a city, they'd ransack it, they'd take people away as slaves, shit like that, and steal away women and have them marry them off to their soldiers. You see, like, examples of this in the Bible and stuff, right? That's what I'm talking about. We don't do that kind of thing anymore. But when you do that in a war, when you go and you completely subjugate a population for generations, destroy everything they have, they really can't mount a resistance, right? So the thing is, modern warfare is not like that anymore. You don't go into a country and just kill everybody and then take over their land, and the people you don't kill you put into slavery. You don't really do that anymore. You know what I mean? So what ends up happening is that you get these sort of resistance movement kind of things, and it results in terrorism essentially. They call this asymmetrical warfare. So it'll result in these sort of resistance sort of movements or terror cells depending on what side you're on, right? And in order to stamp, that's exactly what happened in Afghanistan. So the Taliban flees, they go away, but then this sort of, resistance movement starts, right? The same thing happens in Iraq as well. So then you have guys setting off roadside bombs and that kind of thing, not engaging the armed forces directly, but using terrorist tactics, using things like bombs and tripwires and assassinations, that kind of thing, right? And so then you're fighting this insurgency, that and then your war becomes, basically an anti-insurgency campaign, and that's basically where Afghanistan has been for the last, 19 years, right? Ever since the Taliban like lost, you know, then it's turned into an anti-insurgency kind of campaign, you know, with little flare-ups here and there, right? And that really does not do a lot you know, that really does not do a lot to, I guess, you know, engender the populace to your cause. When you have to go door to door and smash down doors looking for suspects and shit like that, and I'm sure you've seen the videos of the United States, armed forces going door to door in Iraq and Afghanistan, smashing down doors, kicking them over, handcuffing people, shit like that, right? People get angry at that kind of thing, you know, especially if it's like these soldiers. You see them, you start seeing them as an occupying force, right? And even if the people they're fighting against are insane religious wackos who will throw you off a building for being gay, or you know steal you away when you're 15 years old and marry you off to some 75-year-old piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like, and even if they are like the worst people ever, you know, you will also hate you'll see your occupying force. They become oppressors. And people get pissed at that kind of thing. And it's like, how many times did a drone strike blow up a wedding in Afghanistan or Pakistan or something like that? You know, because the guy on the other end of the fucking, using the PlayStation controller to like fly this drone just sees like a giant like fucking group of people and can't tell what's going on. How many times do we hear about that with innocent people getting bombed or killed by drone strike, or, you know, something like that, right? That pisses people off. And do that for 20 years, you know? It's no fucking wonder that, the minute the Americans left, the guys there just kind of threw down their arms and just gave up, because that's what happened, all right? That's really what happened. By this point, it was like, we were just there to prop up the Afghan government, right? And the thing is, what Joe Biden said about them was true. They had 300,000 troops and the best technology available, right? Because that technology was our technology, right? Because it was our, government fucking arms dealers, defense contractors, is what we call them in this country. But that's what they are. They're arms dealers. It was our guys selling them these weapons, selling them the Humvees, selling them the machine guns and the anti fucking, you know, tow rockets and the fighter jets, right? And that's another thing that the conservatives are right, pissed off at now. They're saying all those weapons are in Taliban hands. Yeah, but the Taliban does not have trained, jet fighter pilots. I wouldn't worry about that too much. Right. They've got all this high-tech shit there. Most of it is going to be sitting there rotting in a field because they don't have the training in order to, fly an F-15 or something. So don't worry about that. The Taliban does not suddenly have an air force. What you should worry about is them selling these things to, other countries like North Korea and Russia. That's what you should be worried about. You know, now all these other countries have prime examples of the equipment we use, right? And they'll be able to study it and make like countermeasures and find out weaknesses in it and shit like that, you know. So that's kind of like a bad thing that's come out of this that people aren't thinking about. Anyway, God, where were we? So yeah, let's get back to what's going on. So just a quick recap. Somewhere in the area of 60,000 Afghan civilians have been killed because of this. They're saying the number of American casualties is under 3,000. What they're not listing are, of course, people who were injured but not killed. If they were to add that number, it would be like way higher. And I was looking around, I couldn't actually find anywhere where I could get like a number of like battlefield casualties from this particular war, but we're probably looking, at a magnitude higher than the actual death count. I couldn't begin to estimate. I know that it's pretty fucking high. This is people who are wounded, people who are paralyzed, things like that. You know, a lot. But as far as actual deaths, the official death count is somewhere around 2,900, somewhere around there. Still a little much, I would say. You know, of course, when it comes to money, we also don't know how much money was spent on this either. You know, the low estimate for the cost of this war, as far as money wise, is $1 trillion, right? I would be very, very, very surprised if that's actually what it was. It's more likely 3 times higher than that, right? Seriously. And the thing about that is that we will never know exactly how much money was actually spent on this because budgets are, when it comes to certain projects, budgets are top secret information. The reason being is because if you know how much was spent in a particular arena, you can kind of extrapolate from that what it was spent on. Right? So that's why when they talk about black budgets, that's what that is. It's like we can't tell you how much we spent because we don't want you to try to figure out what we spent it on. So we will never know. It could be $1 trillion, it could be $3 trillion, it could be, and imagine what you could do if you had, for example, just $1 trillion. Trillion, right? What you could do with that. You know, there's your universal health care right there, right? There's your free college, right? For everybody in the entire country, right? Like for, like 5 years. Seriously, you could basically fund free college for everyone in the country for like 8 to 10 years with that. You know, you could have free healthcare for everybody in the entire country for like 5 to 10 years with that. That's a shitload of money. This is what we're spending on dropping bombs on people. And, every one of those bombs that falls creates another potential 9/11 terrorist, right? Do you think people are going to forget that we dropped bombs on their country for fucking 20 years straight? I don't think so. I'd be pissed, right? And right, that put on top of that that most people in Afghanistan make roughly $2 a day. You know, 90% of people make $2 a day. So imagine that you just live in this country that has suffered from 20 years of war, 20 years of some occupying force, dropping bombs on you, blowing up weddings, breaking into people's houses, detaining people, throwing people in Guantanamo Bay for decades. There are still people there. The war's over. Can we let those guys out now? Right? There's still people in Guantanamo Bay fucking like 20 years later. People who have never gotten trials, you know, right? We don't even know. There's like some of those guys could have been innocent. We don't know. They never got a trial. They never got to defend themselves, right? You know, and we just kind of forgot all about this. I mean, seriously, like, has anybody even talked about Afghanistan in the last 5 years? When was the last time you heard anything about Afghanistan? Like, never. It barely ever came up before. Now suddenly it's coming up now because it's over and the shit hit the fan now, and everybody's riding Biden's ass over it because he finally had like the guts to end this fucking, you know, malarkey. I guess that's the word Biden would use would be malarkey, right? I don't know. So Biden's approval rating went down finally for the first time because of this. And I can understand. People are pissed. People don't like it when it looks like they lose a war, even if this is like a shitty war that shouldn't have happened in the first place. And even if you like, like people still don't like the perception that America lost at anything. And so they're going to blame somebody. So they're going to blame Biden. Biden has probably just lost re-election because of this. But you know what? I still commend him because he made the right decision because, you know, they had everything they needed. Like the Afghan government had all the troops they needed, had all the money they needed, had the best like equipment technology. The fact is that they just didn't have the will, you know. They didn't have the will, and that's why the fucking Taliban was able to just like, you know, basically fucking roll in there after a week, right? So I have here this video here. This is basically, let me go ahead and cue this up. And I think this was a BBC. Um, Come on, open up, please. There we go. This was a BBC report from like a few years ago. Wow. Is this streaming okay? Because my internet seems to be running really, really slow here. Hang on. Come on, open up, please. That should not be going so slow. Something's on with my. Hang on a second, folks. Give me 1 second. Okay, I think I just had the. Fuck you. Okay, I don't know what's going on with that, but let me just go ahead and queue up this video. I have to find it again. I think I just had like the wrong link. But anyway, let's see, blah, blah, blah. Here it is. Okay. So this was a video from the BBC from.
You're not ready. You don't have a helmet.
All right, quiet you. Um, from the BBC that I think this was from like years ago. Like this is from like 2011 or something. Quite. And let me just move this over here. And then okay, so let's watch this guy. I think this will probably be all right if I make this super huge, right? So yeah, this is from like 2011, and basically these guys here are American soldiers that are there to you know, let me turn it down just a little bit. These guys are there to train the Afghan army, right? So this is, yeah, this is roughly a decade ago. Okay, so watch this because I found this was actually very like compelling and a good explanation of why things just didn't work out there. So check it out. Oh wait, hang on. Where's my audio?
How is he ready? It's like having.
Right.
You're not ready. You don't have a helmet on. Najib doesn't have a rifle right now. How is he ready? It's like having 26 kids that I have to watch after. It really is. Ready would be on the road, staged, ready to move at 8:30.
I think if they introduced drug testing to the Afghan army, we would lose probably 3/4 to maybe 80–85% of the army.
So keep in mind, right? This is 10 years after 9/11, right? So Al Qaeda is destroyed, right? I think a year after this is when Bin Laden gets caught and killed in Pakistan, right? So these guys are trying to train and equip the Afghan army so that they can take over the fight. And you can see what they're talking about. Guys, they're just not paying attention. They're like doing drugs, right? They're not, they just essentially just don't give a shit. And it's kind of sad, and it was like basically a huge waste of time. So let's continue here. We won't watch this entire thing because this is like 6 minutes long, but just to get a little bit more of what, so you can get a general idea of what was going on there. And this is like a decade ago. It never improved essentially. So here we go.
It requires telling them almost 30 times. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Come on, let's go!
Building up Afghanistan's army is one of the mainstays of the US exit strategy from this war. It now stands at around 80,000 soldiers, but President Obama recently announced he wants to triple that number. These US Marines are embedded tactical trainers, also known as ETTs, and their job is to mentor the fledgling Afghan army.
Check your soldiers, make sure they're good. Someone's got a helmet on backwards.
They all still got their weapons slung on their shoulders like it's not a fucking combat patrol. I know we're supposed to advise them and everything like that, but they're supposed to be able to conduct tactical operations without us. So if I wasn't standing here right now, it makes me wonder if a dude in a bright blue shirt would be going into the mountains. And
Yeah, see, do you see that? If I wasn't standing here right now, that's exactly what happened. Right? That's exactly what happened. The minute we left, these guys just, turned tuck tail and bailed because they weren't really interested, you know, because really it was all basically there. It was all a scam, you know. I mean, not just from the Taliban side, it was also from the Afghan government side as well. It was all a scam to keep us there as long as they could so that we would keep paying them, right? So that we would pay for their army, we would pay for their soldiers, we would give them aid, pay for the Afghan president and all that shit. So we would because, having the United States there was like this, like, unending supply of money, right? As they tried to nation build. And in the meantime, they just weren't serious. The Taliban would not engage for like a decade. They would advance when we left and then leave when we came in and not actually fight. And the whole idea was just to bleed shit dry. And if you remember way back in the beginning, right? You know, that was one of the that was basically Bin Laden's strategy. Bin Laden's strategy was to get the United States into a quagmire and bleed it the same way they did with the Soviets. That's what they did to the Soviet Union, you know, just kind of kept them there and having them expend money and resources. you know, War is expensive, right? I mean, we're talking, what do we spend on our military? Somewhere in the area of 700 to 800 billion dollars a year, right? Over 20 years. Think about all that fucking money. All it went. What did we get out of it? We got guys falling off of fucking airplanes because they want to escape the religious fundamentalists. That's what we fucking got out of it. Let's watch a little bit more of this.
he probably would be.
You get over here and you walk into a whole squad of A&A smoking hashish.
Rocking the ganj.
They don't understand that the
Right.
use of drugs, it affects the way that they accomplish their mission.
See, you ever watching them old movies about Vietnam and like it'll be like some Vietnam soldiers, like, the Americans will be in the jungle and they'll be like smoking weed and stuff, right? And all that kind of thing. And then like and it's like this big joke or whatever. That's what happens when you basically have, your military unit there. Like the people in it just don't give a shit, you know. They're not taking it seriously. They don't really care. They're not there to actually do their jobs. They're just there to fuck around, you know. They're there because people are forcing them to be there, you know. It was the same kind of thing in Vietnam. People were forced to be in Vietnam. They were drafted, whatever. So they just didn't have the same morale, you know. Morale was low and people, when shit like that happens, they do everything they can to get out of it. Same kind of thing here. It's like these guys didn't really want to be there, you know. Their heart wasn't in it, right? And that's exactly, what this guy's saying here, what all these dudes are saying, that's exactly what fucking happened. I mean, it's kind of sad because a decade ago this shit was happening. It's like we should have basically left, you know, we should have actually in real life we should have left in fucking 2002. We really basically the nanosecond the fucking Taliban was gone, we should have just bailed and then focused on Al Qaeda, finding Osama bin Laden, right? We shouldn't have allowed mission creep to get in there and then suddenly try to, because what they're trying to do, they're trying to turn Afghanistan into something like Japan or Germany, where they can have a continued, military presence in a friendly country, right? It's not going to happen. It didn't happen because I mean the people there didn't want us there. I don't know. Let's go on.
Ultimately, it affects their ability to protect their nation and get Afghanistan on its feet.
Assalamu alaikum.
Singe, Jory. Who's smoking hashish around here?
Hiç kes nemicaşa.
Who's smoking hash?
Nis. Kes nis. We're gonna find them.
Soldiers come out without helmets. Soldiers come out missing a lot of gear. There's inspections that need to be done before we step off on a patrol. Right now, we're not going to go on the patrol.
Tell him to come over here.
All right, here's the guy. They catch him smoking weed.
What kind of cigarette is that? What? Why are you throwing away your cigarette? Aren't cigarettes worth a lot of money here?
See, what I don't understand is how come they're not making this guy like fucking do push-ups or something, or right, making him like run laps or like making him peel potatoes or some shit like that. Like, I thought there's supposed to be discipline in the army. Maybe they're not allowed to. Maybe they're not allowed to push around the Afghans. You know, they're just there to train them, and they're not. I don't know. I know that's fucked up. But there was one little part here I wanted to talk about where this is the guy who's in command of all this right here. This one sort of like this guy here seems to be in command of these guys. I want to. He actually talks a little bit about like their motivations, so I thought this was interesting.
We are a little better than we were, and I hope in the future we'll improve some more. But in the meantime, the international forces have to stay. They have to stay here to help us.
If things go on as they are in Afghanistan, then it's just going to get worse and worse. It will never get any better.
Yep, that's exactly what happened. Right? Exactly what happened. It never got any better. So there was right over here. I wanted to find, here he is. Here's the guy talking. Let's see. This I thought was actually some interesting stuff right at this part.
You have to figure out what motivates your soldiers. And you need to get that sense of nationalism that, you know, that Afghanistan can be a good country, that, you know, will play on a global scale with all the other countries, that can stand up to Pakistan, that can stand up to Iran, you know, and be, you know, the Afghanistan of history.
I've talked to them like this many times. I've gone over it again and again. But they just come for a short while, and if they don't like it here, they just desert. I don't get along with them, and they don't get along with me.
Promotion in the Afghan army often has more to do with family connections and money than ability or merit. This provides little incentive to the average soldier.
You know, when you look at the enemy, they have performance-based promotions where, you know, if they do a good job, they get promoted, vice who they're related to. And you kind of have to respect that in a way.
He doesn't have any of his gear on. You're not ready. You don't have a helmet on. Najib doesn't have a rifle right now.
Okay, enough of this. But still, let me put this down in the, you know, this is where I'm getting this from Reddit. So I'll put this down in the chat for you guys if you want to check it out. Pretty interesting stuff, you know, where they basically just kind of outline. I mean, the thing is, even back then, this was 10 years ago, right? It obviously never got any better, you know. They obviously never accomplished their mission. It's really sad and screwed up because all that, you know, just think about just wasted time and money and lives, you know. The lives, it's like how many people, you know, had their entire lives ruined. How many families were destroyed? You know, when you have wars like this, like it's not just like you know, a couple of like soldiers, blah blah blah. It's like no, entire cities and like towns were like destroyed, people's livelihoods destroyed, you know, entire families wiped out. Stray fucking missile just goes off course, blows up a fucking apartment building, you know, kills 185 people. Shit like that happens in war all the time, you know. Drone strike blows up a wedding. I mean, the thing is, the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy, right? That happened over and over and over again, you know. For what? For nothing, right? Absolutely nothing. And here's the thing about it, right? Should we blame? So you have right now, the everybody is basically writing Biden's ass over this. Everybody, right? They're asking him questions about stuff that, like, for example, you're starting to see these press conferences they have, right? And they're asking him questions about shit that, like, just they would never, ever, ever ask before. I'm not going to open this link, but here's a link to basically one of the press conferences here, if you want to check it out, where a Fox News reporter is asking questions about policy, like, and the thing is, it's like this is, during any normal given in press conference, usually the questions are sort of fluffy and politically charged or pointed. And you can tell, especially when it comes to, like, say, a correspondent from Fox News, the questions they ask will be tailored made to whatever agenda Fox is pushing that week. But now they're asking really tough questions. They're asking questions about shit like, well, what does this mean strategically for, blah blah blah. This, like, you know what I mean? And they're like really writing his ass on it now because they're kind of basically capitalizing on the idea that Joe Biden lost us the war, right? And in real life, Joe Biden, the war was lost years ago. I mean, you saw the video right there, man. If we would have pulled out, yeah, I mean, seriously, if we would have stayed for another 20 years, the exact same shit would have happened, right? We lost the war in like 2003. The minute it turned into a quagmire, the minute that the mission creep stopped from, changed from getting Al Qaeda to nation building, it was over. And this was always going to be the eventual, like, result of this. And people who are, especially now, you have a lot of Republicans that are trying to play this the other way. It's like they're in denial, right? They're in denial, and the shitty thing is that it's gonna work. It's gonna work. Biden's probably gonna lose the election because of this, right? Most likely, will the Democrats will get stomped in the midterms, which were already not looking good for them anyway. This is kind of seal the coffin. The independent voters out there are gonna see this, and they're gonna blame the Democrats. You know, things to keep in mind here. So this actually was the Afghan withdrawal, you know, was actually something that the Trump people negotiated. This is some just a little bit of recent history, right? Of course, Donald Trump and his administration are now trying to deny that, completely deny that they had anything to do with this whatsoever, but in real life they did. What they did basically is they went and they made a deal with the Taliban themselves, and they did not involve the Afghan interim government, the Afghan government, right? In order to basically just went to the Taliban and said, hey, we're withdrawing. We want you to not attack when we withdraw, right? Over last year. And Donald Trump set a timetable of May 1st, 2021, right? And if you remember, the coverage right around that time was pretty much mixed. He actually got a lot of praise from some people on the left, people like Kyle Kalinske, for example, gave him some praise and said, do it, bring us out. And then, of course, you get the Warhawks that said that this would happen if he exactly what happened is what would happen if we pulled out. And the thing is that, well, what was the solution from the Republicans? If we're not supposed to leave Afghanistan, what solution do they have to it? They didn't have a solution. Their solution was stay in Afghanistan until the end of time. That was their solution because, you know, Halliburton and fucking you know, Lockheed Martin and other defense contractors and fucking arms dealers and shit like that make a shitload of money in Afghanistan. So stay there forever. And they could just use it. So that was their, so you got to remember this, the Republicans do not have solutions ever. right? Especially when it comes to shit like war. Their solution when it comes to war is to drop more bombs. That's their solution. So we probably would have stayed there for, if it was up to the Republicans, another decade or so. Even Donald Trump's plan would have left roughly 2,000 troops in Afghanistan. So it really wasn't a complete withdrawal anyway, right? Now, one could argue one way or the other, maybe that would have been enough. Maybe 2,000 troops would have been enough of a deterrent. Somehow, I don't think so, right? Somehow, I think we would have had the exact same result then that we had now if we just would have left a small contingent of troops there. Maybe that would have emboldened the Afghans to just invade more. Maybe we would have ended up having to send more troops back, and it just never would have been a complete withdrawal. That's kind of what's happened over the last 20 years. They'd draw down troops, the Taliban would surge, they'd fucking add more troops, they'd retreat. Stuff like that. And that's how they did it on purpose because, they basically did not engage directly. It was all just a ploy to keep Americans there, keep them spending money, keep them wasting money, right? And, drain the country dry. That was their strategy. So their strategy fucking worked, right? Anyway, so now you're seeing that the Trump people at least are trying to do everything they can to distance themselves from this debacle. You know, you have Donald Trump saying, like, making comments to the effect of, if I was in charge, this wouldn't have happened, which is, yeah, okay. This is exactly what have fucking happened, right? If you are a Republican or a conservative and you actually think Donald Trump would have handled this withdrawal better, if he would have had a better plan, you're fooling yourselves, right? I don't know. I guess let's not bullshit ourselves, folks. You know. Now the thing is that okay, I really do think that ripping the band-aid off, getting us out of Afghanistan was the right way to go. So I am not criticizing Joe Biden for that. What I do think though is that I think he got hoodwinked into believing that the you know Taliban wouldn't take the country back so fast, right? Now it appears that all of the intelligence apparatus out there, the intelligence community was telling him this is exactly what was going to happen, right? And that it would happen fast, apparently, according, to what I'm reading in the news, the CIA and all those people were saying this is exactly what's going to happen, and it'll happen within, days, not months. But I don't know. I mean, maybe Biden's lying about that. Most likely he probably is, right? Um, but I do think that because apparently his official excuse for not, for example, evacuating, you know, American allies and NGOs and things like that ahead of time was that the Afghan government told him not to. Now, I don't know if you believe this or not. If we could take him at his word here, then I would say that that is a major blunder. And this is kind of why I don't believe it. Because it sounds like, who are you going to trust? Are you going to trust your intelligence people who are telling you that this is what's going to happen? Or are you going to trust the guy that's been ripping us off for 20 years? Right? Who are you going to trust? And so I think he just made the decision just to say, fuck it, pull us out, and is lying to us, saying that, oh, well, we thought that the Afghan government would last longer. I think that's a lie. I think that's the lie, and that he really just wanted to end Afghanistan. Right. In which case, he should just come out and say it. Yeah, I wanted to end it. But his major mistake here then is then he'd have to own up to, like, well, why didn't you evacuate everybody? You know, because now we have, I'm sure you guys have all seen the stories and videos and things of people hanging onto airplanes and stuff like that. You know, that trying to get out of the country, right? Because they're basically afraid of getting murdered by, you know, violent armed religious fanatics. I mean, there was that one video of two people falling off a plane. I think one of the commenters here said, like, the guy was 19 years old. Think about how desperate you got to be to try to hang on to an airplane like that. I mean, That's like, why did that guy do that? I mean, he must have been like so afraid for his life. Like, did you actually think that you could hang on to a plane going 30,000 feet in the air like that? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that person never saw an airplane before because that doesn't seem like something a rational person would do. But I don't know. Apparently, that guy was scared enough for his life that, maybe he thought he could hang on. I saw another story about they found a dead body in a wheel well of one of the jets. So the wheels retract, and you know, if he didn't get crushed when the wheels retracted, then he died when the plane went up in the fucking atmosphere. Because it's freezing up there and there's no air to breathe, right? So I don't mean to be laughing at this guy, but dude, it's like I'm laughing because it's so tragic. That's kind of how I react to bad news is to like laugh a little bit so that I don't get depressed. Because it's fucking depressing. It's depressing as hell to see this, man. Like, I don't know, dude. It's fucked up. It's sad and fucked up. And it's like, and the thing about it is that, there's nothing you can do about it personally. There's nothing we can do about it. We can't, the war's over. What do you want to do? Reinvade? You know? That's the thing when you get all these, conservatives and Republicans talking shit about this and how it was all handled all bad. What's your solution? What do we do? Do we put troops back there? Do we continue the quagmire? Do we does the longer we put troops, if we invade again, all that's going to do is just kill more people, right? Kill more people and radicalize more terrorists in the future, right? We already have because of this, we already have an entire generation of Islamic you know, radical jihadists now that are going to be targeting the United States. And that was like that even before the war, even before all this shit. That was already a consequence of this, right? So now we're just going to have to, I guess keep an eye on them, right? Make sure they don't try to set up training camps and shit again. I mean, the chances of us getting involved there again is very, very high anyway. So it's fucked up. There's no answers. That's the thing, and there's no answers, and there's nothing you can do about it personally. There's nothing, nobody you can vote for. There's no law that we can pass. There's no foundation that you can donate to. There's no place you can go volunteer your time for. There's no solution. It's just sort of, I guess, the best thing we can do is try to contain them, you know. So, God, it's fucking, I don't know. I kind of lost track here. Went off on a big tangent. Sorry about that, folks. Anyway, getting back to this, yeah, so I think Biden got a little, I think he got high on his own supply here. He believed his own hype a little bit, thought that maybe this wouldn't be such a bad thing, and obviously wasn't expecting this fucking debacle, you know. So now we have to deal with the consequences. But ultimately, I think he made the right decision. I think it was time to end the war there, you know. Let's not forget why Afghanistan started in the first place. Okay, we didn't have to have a war there. They offered to fucking turn over Osama bin Laden. They offered to turn out the Al Qaeda, right? And George W. Bush didn't want to do that. George W. Bush didn't go for it. He wanted unconditional surrender, right? And then halfway through it, like, a year later, Afghanistan gets pushed to the side because God told George W. Bush to invade Iraq. That's actual true shit, at least according to George W. Bush, right? He, please remember that, George W. Bush claimed that he went and prayed, you know, and had a long soul searching, dark tea time of the soul or whatever the fuck you call it, and came out and said that he got a divine message to invade Iraq. So Afghanistan had to get pushed to the side, right? That's what we were kind of dealing with, folks. We had essentially a fundamentalist government ourselves at that time, almost, at least the executive branch, right? Versus another fundamentalist government in Afghanistan, you know. I mean, I'm not the only person to draw some comparisons between the two. Now, that apparently is a thing that really pisses conservatives off when you try to compare religious fundamentalists, Christian religious fundamentalists here in this country to the Taliban. That really, really, really pisses them off a lot. And I can understand why. It's not like fundamentalists here are, murdering people, lighting them on fire and stuff like that. At least not that much, right? But they would if they could. That's the other thing to remember. They definitely, people like the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the fucking militia movement people, the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, things like that, the white supremacists, they would be very, very, very happy to throw people off buildings or execute them for being gay, for being a leftist, right? This is absolutely true. I have a picture here. This is from Nicholas J. Fuentes, who, if you don't know who Nicholas J. Fuentes is, he is a big time white supremacist Nazi piece of human garbage stuffed into a three-piece suit with a pair of 50-cent sunglasses on. Here is Nick Fuentes basically coming out in his support of the Taliban. The Taliban is a conservative religious force. The U.S. is a godless and liberal. The U.S. is godless and liberal. The defeat of the U.S. government in Afghanistan is in unequivocally a positive development. Yep, very American for you there. Remember, these are the people that always try to claim that they're patriots. You'll always hear from, you know, you always hear from the far right. They always say that we're patriots, we love this country, blah 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 blah. Yeah, well, they seem to love being fundamentalist, bigoted assholes more than they love the United States. You know, Here's some other bad takes from people. Mike Pompeo. Let's hang on 1 second. Let me just cue this guy up. Quiet. Let's move this over here. This is Mike Pompeo on Fox News. Mike Pompeo, of course, is the former, I think it was Secretary of State under Trump. So let's hear what he has to say.
Crushed him.
Finally,
Oh, wait.
and I've got about 2 minutes here, sir. You graduated first in your class from West Point in 1986, and I'm sure you vividly remember.
Actually, you know something? I should make this a little smaller so that I don't get nailed by the YouTube algorithm, right? I don't want the YouTube bots to cancel my stream, so let's just make that a little bit smaller and do it like that.
That it was just a decade earlier in 1975 when the U.S. pulled out of Saigon, and you saw U.S. diplomats, Vietnamese, people who had been sided with us, clamoring onto helicopters on the embassy roof, which scarred our country and our military for years. What do you think the fall of Afghanistan is going to say to our allies and to our enemies? And what do you think it's going to mean for our image of ourselves?
Chris, that's a very important question. I think weak American leadership always harms American security. So this is in the context of a Biden administration that has basically abandoned the global stage in favor of climate change. Right? They've been focused on critical race theory while the embassy is at risk. That didn't happen during our 4 years. I do think there's a real risk here. I think our soldiers, sailors, our junior enlisted soldiers have done amazing work along the way. But I think the senior military leadership that had 20 years to build out these coalition forces, the Afghan National Security Forces, has to fundamentally rethink the training that they provided them.
Okay, so, and if you guys caught that, it wasn't because, it was all a big scam. It wasn't because we didn't have let's turn this shit off. Fuck this asshole. It wasn't because of any of the other problems, because we just weren't serious there, because the populace wasn't on our side. It wasn't because of any of those things. It was because of critical race theory and climate change that we had to pull out of Afghanistan, that we weren't able to effectively nation build in a country that we've been dropping bombs on for 20 years straight, because of critical race theory. Yeah, that's an incredibly smart take from an incredibly genius guy. God, what a piece of shit. And it's just that kind of pissed me off a little bit there because it's like, this is like a humanitarian crisis going on there in Afghanistan now, right? There's people trying to escape. Human rights are going to get violated up the fucking wazoo. I already saw a report, like a news article about how the Taliban is looking for, basically to force women to like marry their soldiers. You know, they're creating lists of unmarried women between the ages of 15 to 45. You know, 15 because that's Sharia law there. So they could just marry like if you're 15 years old, you're what is that 10th grade? That's what 15 years is, right? And they could just marry you off to some fucking scuzzy cave dweller dude, that you've never met before, and you're his wife now because fucking, Sharia law, right? That shit's happening, you know. This fucking motherfucker sitting here is like blaming it on critical race theory. I, the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Ah, God, these people are so fucking stupid. Anyway, this here is Tucker Carlson. Carlson. He thinks that let me cue this one up as well. He has a very, very bad take on all of this also. Let me see. Quiet. Shut up. So let me just fast forward to the relevant part here so that we're not, let's see, what time is that? Roughly 9 minutes in, because Tucker Carlson is this ridiculous, windbag. And I think what I can do here, let me see. I think I can do something like, I think I can arrange this so that this guy gets, no, that's not gonna work. Sorry, I want to try to do something like, fuck it. I'll figure that out later. Let's just make this, let's see, big, right? Nope, quiet, quiet, Tucker Carlson, shut up. Fuck it, let's just move it over. I don't care anymore. They can kill my stream if they want. This is Tucker Carlson. He's a piece of fucking garbage. We're gonna listen to him talk about, you know, his incredibly awful racist take on what's going on in Afghanistan here.
Groveling for our forgiveness, but they're not. Why? Because contrition requires decency. There's no chance. So we're getting it. And if history is any guide, and it's always a guide, we will see many refugees from Afghanistan resettle in our country in coming months, probably in your neighborhood. And over the next decade, that no.
Yeah. What's wrong with that? Exactly. See, you see, this is what, something that we have to remember, right? People like Tucker Carlson, Mike Pompeo, any of these people, they don't actually give a shit about what actually happened in Afghanistan. They don't care that of all the money and lives, right, that have been squandered and all of the future terrorists and stuff, they're just bending it back around to fit their own political views, right? So Tucker Carlson is a white supremacist piece of human fucking garbage, and his incredibly bad take in here is that now more brown people are going to come to the United States. Oh, we're going to have to take more refugees in. You know, these are the people that helped us there for 20 years. Those people in that airport that were trying to get away, that were hanging on to airplanes desperate to escape, those are the informants and the interpreters and the people that worked with us there, right? The people that worked in the Afghan government, right? Those are the people there that helped us try to nation build in their country, try to keep the Taliban out, right? They, if anybody deserves to come to this country and start a new life away from oppressive religious fundamentalism, it's these people. But Tucker Carlson doesn't want that because they're not white, right? Of course, he's not saying that. He's saying refugees, like they're fucking on like from another planet or some shit like that. But that's basically what it is. This is essentially just great replacement theory, but bent around in order to, and they always throw this little bit in there. They always throw these little bones to their white supremacist like fucking, you know, constituents here. I mean, Jesus Christ. Let's listen to a little bit more, but I don't want to listen to too much of this guy because it makes my fucking head hurt.
Number may swell to the millions. So first we invade and then we're invaded. It is always the same.
We're invaded. With us taking in refugees of people who helped us, right? Us taking in the people who aided us against the fight, the 20-year war against the Taliban, that's an invasion. It's unbelievable.
We'll be spending a lot more time on that subject in coming weeks because it matters. But first, since Kabul has just fallen, it might be worth asking the most obvious question of all. Why did the Taliban win? How did the 6th century triumph over the 21st century? There are indications that the single most notorious and reviled government in the world, primitive people famous for their brutality, rigidity, and humorlessness, are more popular in parts of Afghanistan than they were when we expelled the mullahs from Kandahar 20 years ago. They don't seem to be less popular. So how did that happen? What's the answer?
What's the answer? So it just doesn't occur to this guy that dropping bombs on people for 2 decades doesn't really, make you very popular with them. I don't understand. It's like, what the fuck do you think, you know, Tucker Carlson, why they're not, why they're more popular than the United States, right? Imagine that. Imagine if, for example, you live in Texas, right? And let's say that, I don't know, the Westboro Baptist Church or whatever takes over the fucking country, right? And, they're like insane religious fundamentalists and shit like that. And then let's say France, in this ridiculous scenario, France comes in and kicks them out and gets into this quagmire. But in order to do so, they have to kill 50,000 people. Whose side are you going to be on? The foreign invaders who will kill you and drop bombs on you? Or the religious fundamentalist assholes who actually are from your country and maybe they're assholes, but fuck it, right? Which side are you going to be on? It's like, I don't understand. And see, he really doesn't understand. Look at him. Look at him. Look at his weirdly slopey kind of caveman brow eye thing here. He really doesn't get that, the United States were not the good guys in this fight. They're really in real life there are no good guys. That's the thing. It's not heroes versus villains. No, no. We were there for the wrong reasons, right? It's kind of man, this guy's such a piece of shit. Anyway, just a little bit more, then we'll turn him off.
We ought to pause to think about that. Let's not just blow past it like it was an act of God. It's not. What is the answer? Well, countries are very complicated, all of them, so there are likely many answers. But one of those answers may be that the population of Afghanistan has firmly rejected what our leaders were selling it over 20 years. It turns out that the people of Afghanistan don't actually want gender studies symposia. They didn't actually buy the idea that men can become pregnant. They thought that was ridiculous. They don't hate their own masculinity. They don't think it's toxic. They like the patriarchy. Some of their women like it too. So now they're getting it all back.
That is his take. His take there is that, oh, they didn't like us because we tried to make pink-haired, social justice warriors out of them. That is the dumbest shit I have ever heard in my entire life. That is the stupidest thing that anybody has ever said ever in the history of everything. And I actually think I stopped it on a very good still here, just because he looks incredibly dumb and stupid right here. That isn't seriously. This is what he's saying. He's saying, oh, they don't want gender symposiums. Oh, they don't think men can get pregnant. That's the dumbest fucking thing. Oh my God, it's so dumb. You know, so not doesn't mention at all the weddings that get fucking bombed by remote drones, the 50,000 people that have been killed over this. The entire country carpeted in landmines, even from before we invaded, but still, even there now today, right? Entire cities getting razed and destroyed, entire families getting killed. Doesn't mention any of that shit. You know, 500 people thrown in fucking basically an American gulag for 20 years. Still, there's something like 50 people still hanging out there in Guantanamo Bay. 20 years later, no charges, no trials, nothing like that. Doesn't mention any of that shit. It's all because of critical race theory, right? It's all because of those damn social justice warriors here trying to push, you know, on Afghanistan and like I don't know, make them watch fucking Steven Universe or something. It's the dumbest fucking thing ever. It's so dumb. Oh my god. How does this fucking moron even breathe?
So maybe it's possible that we failed in Afghanistan because the entire neoliberal program is grotesque. It's a joke. It's contrary to human nature. It answers none of our deepest human desires. It is merely a performance staged for the performer. It's not even supposed to improve your life. It's ridiculous. And ideas that ridiculous can only be imposed by force. Only
Okay, enough of this shit. Let's turn this off.
with armed men at gunpoint.
Yeah, shut up. Um, I think Tucker Carlson forgot what neoliberal means right there because I don't think it means what he thought it means because neoliberal is kind of, you know, basically capitalism, right? Was he saying that, neoliberal in that context meant like what, social justice warrior stuff? Is that what he was trying to talk about? Because let's take a look over here and let's just do, neoliberal, right? Favoring policies that promote free market capitalism, deregulation, and reduction in government spending. That's what neoliberal means, right? It has nothing to do with critical race theory or gender studies or gender symposiums or any of that shit. So, did he just really not understand that, or was he actually criticizing capitalism right there? I'd be surprised. Kind of a moron, that guy. Kind of a fucking idiot. Jesus Christ. And it's all basically great replacement theory. That's what that is. I have another video by him, which is also on Facebook, which I'm not going to open because fuck that fucking piece of fucking garbage. But there's another video that I just put in the chat there. And in fact, here's the first video that I just played. Fun part starts at around 9:20 if you guys want to watch it for yourselves. That first one that I just posted there also, he kind of just doubles down on the you know, anti refugee status. And basically what it is, it's basically essentially the great replacement theory all over again. That's what he's talking about. It's like they can't stop being racist for 5 fucking seconds, right? And like, try to look at somebody's fucking humanity of people who helped us. These people helped us for crying out loud, right? They should be able to just walk right in. It's fucking mind blowing. It's mind blowing, man. Our country's fucked. The United States is screwed. We're gonna collapse. I give it 20 years at this point. If we can survive 20 years without collapsing the same way the Soviet Union did, I will be greatly surprised. In fact, you know what? I bet the next time a fucking Republican wins the presidential election, I think that's it for the country. It's pretty much over. You better start saving up food and ammunition. Right. And start moving your money into gold. Start buying some Bitcoin, something like that, because American dollars are going to be worth jack shit after that shit happens. You know? Just watch, folks. It's going to fucking happen. Anyway, let's see. Uh, here's one. This is Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk is the leader of Turning Point USA, which is a group that goes out to high schools and colleges and things and basically fucks up little kids' minds. Here's his incredibly like stupid and racist fucking take on what's going on here in Afghanistan. Let's turn this guy on. Let's listen to what he has to say.
What would the motive be here? I do not want to hear from conservative pundits that this was incompetence.
Actually,
this was weakness.
I don't want to get gigged by the YouTube algorithm, so we'll just keep it small.
It's much more sinister than that. All roads lead to political transformation. Remember this. The most important thing for the Democrats is having permanent political control. Now, you might be saying...
Yeah, okay. That's kind of the point of politics, is to take control. If anybody has permanent political control in this country, it's Republicans. One thing to remember is that the last 7 elections, like 7 of the last 8 elections, the Democrats have won the popular vote, you know, right? Like the only time, like the last presidential election that a Republican president won the popular vote was 2004, you know? So it's like, yeah, that's not looking very good. More Democrats voted for Democratic candidates in the last like 5 elections than Republicans, but yet Republicans are the ones that have the largest number of state houses, the most senators, right? They control most of the courts, they control most of the governorships, things like that. The reason why is because of gerrymandering, right? So gerrymandering, and because Republicans cheat like crazy. And I'm not going to get too much into this because I have literally a dozen streams and videos where I talk about this very same thing, about how Republicans cheat in elections, about how they pass laws that favor themselves and stop people from voting, you know, how they'll do things like they'll defund um, you know, uh they'll defund like basically voting machines and shit like that in certain districts just to fuck up Democrats, things like that, right? All throughout the country. In pretty much every state, you always see these shenanigans come up every fucking election. So don't tell me that it's like, oh, they're only interested in control, right? I mean, when your party is the one that actually fucking controls everything, even right now, even when the Democrats have a majority in the House and a conceivable majority in the Senate, even fucking now, they're still not able to get over that hump because of conservative elements within the Democratic Party, right? So yeah, it's not as cut and dry as what this fucking guy's saying. Anyway.
All right, Charlie. What does the fall of Kabul have to do with Democrats taking over political control?
Yeah, here it comes.
I was watching CNN last night. They actually had on this. Colin Powell was quoted in the Washington Post. He said he never said this, but he did.
Make good on what? What are you talking about? Get to the point, please.
The old Pottery Barn statement. Producer Connor can go find this article. It was back in the Washington Post in like 2003, where Colin Powell said, well, you know, at Pottery Barn, if you go in there, you break it, you buy it. He said that's what American foreign policy has to be. And the funniest part of the whole story is that Pottery Barn came back and said that's not our policy. It's like, that's not the point. The point is that he thought that policy, you break it, you buy it. You break Afghanistan, you buy it. What is the motive then? I saw it this morning, and our prediction came true. President Joe Biden's Department of Defense will accept 30,000 Afghan refugees into military installations following the collapse of Kabul. Boom. Political transformation.
So he's basically saying, right, this is Charlie Kirk's incredibly, ridiculously dumbass take on the end of the Afghan war. He's saying that Joe Biden pulled us out of Afghanistan on purpose, specifically so that he would take in 30,000 refugees who then will come and vote Democrat? Is that what he's trying to fucking say? Right? Political transformation. Right? It's the great replacement theory. That's what he's talking about. They're going to import people to vote for them. That's what he's fucking, that's what he's saying here. That's the dumbest shit ever. It's so fucking dumb. And it's the exact same take that Tucker Carlson had. It's unbelievable. Do people just do they get all this shit from like a single source? You know? I where did this fucking talking point come from? Did they all come to this conclusion individually? Because they're all fucking, white supremacist Nazis and shit? I don't god damn. It's so oh my god. All right. I'll put this down here for you guys too so that you can read this also, so you can see it for yourself. He just basically goes on for a little bit more for the next minute or so, basically repeating the same shit over and over again. And the thing is, 30,000 people, is that gonna how that's not gonna affect a fucking election. It's not even true. That's the thing, you know. If it was maybe 30, 3 million people, right, settled into certain places. But here's the thing, right? Who's going to say that they're all going to vote for Democrats, right? Who's going to say that they'll even vote or even if they'll get the right to vote? Because you have to be a citizen in order to vote. So if you're a refugee, you don't just show up here and then suddenly you vote. You have to become a citizen, right? It can take years and years and years to become a citizen of the United States, right? Like literally like fucking 15, 20 years. So okay, well yeah, that'll affect an election in like what? 2041? Is that what he's worried about? Right? 20 years from now that these people might vote in an election? That's fucking dumb. Right? It's the same thing where like people, it's the same reason where like conservatives will say shit like chain immigration. They just want to bring people over here, so that they can people want to come here so that they can bring their families and it's chain immigration. Yeah, well, it takes forever to become an American citizen. Like, so what? Yeah, someone will bring their family over in 20 years so then they can what? Vote Democrat. It's like get the fuck out of here. It's the dumbest fucking thing. It's so dumb. Oh my god. One more. This is Ilhan Omar. Thankfully this is only like 20 seconds long, so we don't have to listen to this dumb bitch talk for too long, right? Not Ilhan, sorry, Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about Ilhan Omar. Sorry, I did not mean to badmouth Ilhan Omar right there. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about Ilhan Omar, right? This is on Twitter, so I can just put here, and this is just audio for 49 seconds, so let's listen to what she's got to say.
With our Afghan allies that we're leaving behind. But I do want to say one thing about that. I'm pretty adamant about our country. It's our home, and I'm pretty picky about who comes in. And so I'm a big supporter of Trump's strong border policies, especially the Remain in Mexico policy. And I want very good vetting of people that we're bringing in, especially with the Afghans.
Of course.
And so I want them vetted out of the country before they're brought in. And I just think we need to be smarter about that. I'm pretty upset with my own state governor, Brian Kemp, for just openly saying, literally the next day after this started, that he would welcome in Afghan refugees. Yeah. And I'm against that. I don't want Minneapolis in Georgia. I just don't want that, especially after we saw those refugees produce Ilhan Omar in Congress.
Well,
there you go. Just another one. Another one. Oh, yeah, I don't want them coming here because they're brown people and they'll vote Democrat. Stupid as fucking, there is, what she just said right there, right, about the process to allowing refugees to enter the country. There is a 20-step process, 20 steps, right, that can take years for refugees to come into the United States. So the fact that all these people are being evacuated and they're going, they may come to the U.S. as refugees, they may not. We're not, it's going to take it could take like 2, 3, 4 years for this to happen, right? Multiple background checks. Oh, thank you, honey. Sorry. My wife just came and gave me a Starbucks. Anyway, multiple background checks, right? Over and over and over. And it's incredibly tough like that on purpose because the Trump people made it that way. But even before Trump came on, it was like still like a 17-step fucking process, right? So And the thing is, then they won't even be able to vote until they become citizens. So after that, then they have to apply to become citizens, and that could take another fucking 20 years. It's the dumbest shit ever. It's so dumb. Anybody who says this just deserves to get kicked in the fucking face. Punched in the nuts, thrown off a bridge. It's so stupid. It's like, please go fucking. Oh my God. Just stop breeding. Stop breeding, you dumb bitch. And the sad thing is, it's like, okay, well, Charlie Kirk can say fucking something fucking stupid, right? Tucker Carlson could say fucking something stupid. They're just like media assholes with TV shows, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene is a goddamn, representative. She's she's voting on laws that affect this country, and she's so incredibly ridiculously ignorant about so many things. It's like no wonder the United States is so fucked up. You know, somebody just please, I know I say this every time we talk about her, somebody please run against her next time. Somebody please run against her. She ran unopposed. Somebody please run against her and let's vote her ass out. Anyway, so yeah, it's a fucked up situation, folks. Things are, there is no good solution to it. I'm just, you know what? I think finally though, I'm glad it's over. I'm glad it's over. It should have ended literally 20 years ago at this point. December 2001 is when it should have ended. They should have taken the plunge and sent the actual people there, stopped Osama bin Laden, and then just left and negotiated and dealt with the Taliban, you know, and just use international pressure and sanctions, things like that, you know, and contain them the same way we do with North Korea. We contain North Korea, right? You know, it's like a war is not worth it sometimes. And the thing is, North Korea has, incredibly, you know, awful human rights record. They'll do things like they will imprison an entire family for 3 or 4 generations if one guy is like, you know, says the wrong thing or engages in a protest or something like that. They'll take his entire family, throw him in a fucking, you know, throw him in a camp, a hard labor camp for like their entire lives. So there are people in North Korea who were born in labor camps, lived their whole lives, and then died. Right? Seriously, that's how bad it is in North Korea. But we don't go to war with them, right? Because it wouldn't be worth it. Because more people would die. Because it will, you know, cause chaos on the international scene, probably get us in a war with China, right? And the cost, the human cost, and the cost in treasure, I guess, money, and international fucking like the disruption to the international order, it's just not worth it. And sometimes that's what it is. That's the harsh reality. You know, real life is not a comic book. It's not a video game. There aren't good guys and bad guys, right? There's really only the result of your actions in real life. And you may have the best intentions in the world, but sometimes shit just doesn't work out. And even with your great intentions and your philosophy and your whatnot, you want to help people, shit like that. Sometimes your actions have the opposite result, and that's what happened in Afghanistan. You know, 20 years of people getting murdered, bombs falling on people, right? 20 years of that, 20 years of people, of grifting, right? Of the Afghan government just sucking money away from us, right? There's soldiers that were there that were like not even alive when 9/11 happened, if you can believe that shit. Someone who's 18, 19, they weren't even born when the war started and they're in fucking Afghanistan. Like, it's time for that shit to end, you know? So I'm happy. I actually applaud Joe Biden for going through with it because he said during the campaign and stuff that this is what he wanted, and I just thought it was the same bullshit. Obama said the same thing, if you remember. Let's pull out people out of Afghanistan. Trump said the same thing too. Let's pull people out of Afghanistan. Apparently, now they're trying to say it was a hoax. Basically the Trump people are trying to say that his plan was like a ruse. You know, in fact, I have a link here, which this will be the last thing that we look at. Let's just open this up. Last thing, let's just read through this. There's no video here. Fuck you. This is defense1.com, right? Which is this is actually kind of a right wing, I wouldn't say right wing, but definitely conservative kind of, website that talks about like, policy, defense policy shit like that. Trump's pledge to exit Afghanistan was a ruse, his final Secretary of Defense says. It was all a trick. Right. President Donald Trump's top national security officials never intended to pull all U.S. troops out of Afghanistan, according to a new statement by Chris Miller, Trump's last acting defense secretary. So, the deals and stuff that Trump, created, that they did with the Taliban in order to pull people out, it was just a trick. Right. Chris Miller said that the president's public promise to finish withdrawing U.S. forces by May 1st, as negotiated with the Taliban, was actually a play that masked the Trump administration's true intentions to convince Afghan President Ashraf Ghani to quit or accept a better power sharing agreement with the Taliban and keep some U.S. forces in Afghanistan for counterterrorism missions. So it was all a lie, right? So he really didn't want to leave, I guess, according to this guy. Here you go. There's that policy. Anyway, it kind of goes on to talk more about blah blah blah. We didn't want to leave blah 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 because now that people have left. Of course, really it's basically just them walking it back, trying to make Trump and the Republicans not look bad because of this fucking debacle. That's what it really is. So, was this really the plan to begin with, or was this just a lie too, so that they can like distance Trump away from anything that has to do with Afghanistan? Who knows? I think the latter is more likely, but there you go. If that's true, then that means Donald Trump was lying, and we still would have stayed there as well, right? So Biden is the one that ripped off the band-aid. He's the one that finally got us out. And maybe this shit can end. Maybe their country can heal a little bit, you know? I mean, it's not like they would be the only country in the region that's run by wacky religious fundamentalists. I mean, take a look at, Saudi Arabia, right? So, maybe they can improve the lives of people in Afghanistan a little bit. Maybe they can exploit some of that $1 trillion of mineral wealth that they're sitting on. They have probably the largest deposit of lithium in the world there in Afghanistan. And it's funny because now, you'll see YouTube videos and shit about people complaining about that, saying, well, now this is, all that mineral wealth is going to go to the Afghans, it's going to go to the Taliban. Well, yeah, it's their country, it belongs to them. See, that was another thing. Like, roughly in 2010, it came out that there was all this mineral wealth there. And everybody was like, oh, that's another reason why we should stay in Afghanistan for all of eternity. We need this. We need to make cell phones and shit out of it. It's like, no, but it doesn't belong to us, right? The same way that the oil in Iraq also did not belong to us. You know, it's not just illegal to invade other countries and steal their resources, it's also just wrong, you know? So what we should be doing is buying this from them, you know? That may ultimately be the thing that destroys the Taliban. When people have money, when people have jobs, right, and they're able to create a life for themselves, then they have something to lose. They have something worth defending. They tend to be better educated at that point because if you have more money, you're able to afford better schooling just as a society, right? And it's not a coincidence that the more economically, you know, rich countries around the world also tend to have less in the way of, human rights abuses. You know, the United States, Europe, Japan, Australia, right? And even places that have, fundamentalist governments like Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is an incredibly rich country. And yeah, there are human rights abuses in Saudi Arabia. You occasionally hear stories about people being beheaded for witchcraft and shit like that. But it's not on the same scale as it is in Afghanistan, or Syria. They don't throw people off of buildings for being gay in Saudi Arabia, not that I know of. Of course, I'm not defending Saudi Arabia. I'm just saying, if your goal is to make people's lives better, then you don't accomplish that goal by invading them. Is all I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to defend Saudi Arabia at all because, personally, I think they need to be destroyed as well, right? But I'm just saying this is, we're just, there are no good people. There are no heroes in real life. There's just your actions. And, you know, if the people there get tired of that, then they will be the ones that are going to have to be the ones to dispose of the Taliban. It's going to have to come from the people. The people are going to have to want to support it. Right now, they don't care. They just want the war to be over, and that's the honest truth. It's the same way with all of the regimes all around the world. The same thing happened back in the Arab Spring. You remember that? There's this huge uprising all through the Middle East, and Egypt. They toppled the fundamentalist government there, Hosni Mubarak. They toppled the one, with a little help from us in fucking Libya, and then that turns into a fucking war, right? And it's like, it has to come from the ground up, right? And that's maybe the best way we can help them is by helping them economically, right? Improve the quality of their lives, you know, open trading, trade with them, stuff like that. And then maybe people will see like, well, these are the benefits that you actually get from, having a free and open society, right? That'll do more, in my opinion, to get rid of religious fundamentalism than another 20 years of dropping bombs on people. I don't know. So let's read some of the comments here. A lot of comments today. Holy crap. Hang on, I need to get something to drink. Give me 1 second, guys. Anyway, a lot of comments. Let's read through some of these guys. Let's see. Lewis the Hedgehog. Did we really lose or did we stay there too long? Oh yeah, we already read this one. Um, and it was kind of what the entire stream was about. So, Danny Cat loves me. We had a horrible strategy on day one. Basically, no strategy. Yep, yep. Al Qaeda was behind it, but Bin Laden had very little to do with it. Um, oh, you mean 9/11? Yeah, I mean, ultimately he was the leader of Al Qaeda. So, how much he had to do with actually planning the operation, I don't know. I mean, probably not very much, right? Planning the actual operation, training the troops, shit like that. But from what I understand, he was more of a money guy. Like he's the one that procured the funding for Al Qaeda, from what I understand. And apparently, because Bin Laden was actually part of the Mujahideen back in the 90s, who was he was the benefit of CIA training in order to fight the Soviets there. So he had some training in counterinsurgency or basically how to create an insurgency, right? So I don't know. I mean, I really don't know enough about it myself to say exactly what his role in the organization was, whether he was just a figurehead or whether he was actually making command decisions or what, but still he kind of turned into like a sort of a martyr, he kind of like, they allowed him to get away when they could have stopped him in Tora Bora, and after that he sort of was able to like, basically plan terrorist attacks from the safety of another nation that we didn't want to invade because Pakistan is technically one of our allies, right? At least they're supposed to be. So, and I don't know, I mean, they are now, and I'm not so sure much at the time then. So yeah, it's like, I don't know. I think it was more, yeah, but I think you're right. I think it was more symbolic. Like him actually being caught and killed was more of a symbolic victory that brought closure to people here, in the United States. But for basically years before that, like Al Qaeda as a functioning entity has been destroyed. I mean, they think there's what less than 100 members of Al Qaeda left, like in the world, right? There may be like associated groups in like Africa and Yemen and shit like that, but like actual like the original group that plotted 9/11 is like essentially gone. So anyway, let's see. Most of the larger Bin Laden family were close friends with the Bushes. Yes, that is exactly correct. Because Bin Laden came from like a wealthy family, and they had business ties with the Bush. And there were some conspiracy theories about that. There was a thing I remember, like a theory, conspiracy that came up that they were allowed to leave the country, during after 9/11, which I don't think. I think that ultimately turned out to not be true. Like apparently, like the conspiracy theory went that during the days after 9/11, there was a moratorium on flights, and then they lifted it so that Bin Laden's family could leave the United States. I think, if I remember right, that turned out to not be true. But there definitely was some business ties between the Bush family and the Bin Laden family. I mean, how much of that is actually relevant or how much of that is even true or whatnot is like, I don't know, you'd have to investigate, right? So who knows? I'm not going to start speculating about that stuff because I haven't really read enough about that to know if that's just pure conspiracy conjecture or if there's some actual underlying truth to that or not. Let's see. Lewis the Hedgehog. They probably don't know how to maintain fighter jets either, but you're right about the secrets being leaked. Yeah, yeah. See, I don't think we have to worry about, like, say, you know, the Taliban getting a bunch of, like, you know, doing like a fucking, fighter jet raid against some other country. That's not going to happen. But yeah, they're probably selling them to the Chinese and the Russians as we speak right here. So, and whatever helicopters were left, if they had any Apaches, one would hope that the sensitive stuff was destroyed before the army left. One would hope that, you know, there are pictures of them driving around in Humvees and shit like that. So we know that they got some equipment, but I really doubt that the army just bailed and left like sensitive equipment like that laying around because they usually have orders to like blow those things up. Like for example, during the raid on Bin Laden's compound, um, one of the helicopters malfunctioned and couldn't take off, so they blew it up. Like rather than let it get into enemy hands, they blew it up. You know, so I would think that any of the stuff that has like top secret like you know, technology in it would probably be destroyed. At least I hope so. If they were doing their jobs right, that's what they would do. And I don't know, maybe the Humvees they left were just normal Humvees, and it's like, you know. But I know that they have stuff like, they have like reactive shielding and stuff like that, on tanks and on Humvees and things that'll stop like a rocket propelled grenade. Like they have these types of systems on there, and one would hope that they would have stripped all of those out or destroyed them or whatever, so they don't like fall into enemy hands here. I don't know. Hope so. Hope that this withdrawal hasn't permanently fucked our military for like the next couple of decades as well. But who knows? I guess we'll find out, huh? About this kind of thing. Let's see. Nana Cat. We were insane to think that there could ever be an Afghan national army. It's not conceivable. They just have dozens of tribes wearing the same uniforms. Yeah, exactly. There's just not, they just don't have the motivation. You know, the thing is, it's not like these people are incapable or whatever. If you look at Afghanistan before the Soviet invasion, it was actually kind of a pretty modern country. And women had rights there, things like that. They had infrastructure and roads and sewage systems and all that. All that stuff's been destroyed, right? Over, 50 years of war at this point, right? And it's like, you know, what do when your entire country is completely destroyed like that? When you have nothing, like people tend to go back to the basics, right? When they live in crisis like that, they tend to gravitate towards things that give them hope and trust, that they can trust, the things that give them hope, things like their religion. So it's really not a surprise that fundamentalism found a home in Afghanistan. You know, Especially since we encouraged this shit too. We funded these people, the Mujahideen. We gave them the guns and the fucking training so that they could fight our Cold War for us, and then they turn around and do the exact same shit to us. It's like, gee, maybe we shouldn't have done all that to begin with, huh? Uh, let's see. Video Matt presents. For the first time, we didn't lose a war. We didn't lose a war. Damn, man. The old man just gave up re-election. What the fuck? He's 80. He wasn't running again. What? We didn't lose the war? Well, tell that to the Taliban, dude. Kind of looks like we lost the war. But I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying there. Video Matt presents. Um, the actual war itself kind of stopped like, yeah, 20 years ago. And it was just sort of this quagmire, this sort of, it became basically an insurgency. So, when was the last time that they had an actual battle with, like, the Taliban? Like, that shit hasn't happened since like fucking 2001, right? Not really. It's just been more of like, they drop a bunch of bombs, the Taliban leaves, they occupy, they leave, the Taliban comes back. It's just been like that for like 20 years. So I see what you're saying, but still, the engagement, you know, ultimately we're the ones who left and the Taliban is still there. So kind of sounds like they won to me. Uh, Video Matt presents. For the first time, we didn't lose a damn war. You have no damn clue. This was a long time coming. It just shows America is weak. Um, Please name a country which would have won in Afghanistan. We know that country would not be Russia. Russia also lost there. We know it wouldn't be Britain. Britain also lost there as well. So tell me which country could have done what you're asking. Like what first off, you know, what are your winning conditions, right? What does it mean to actually win in Afghanistan? What? Taliban's gone, you know? There's a government in place that's friendly towards you. Is that your winning condition? Right? You've trained the Afghan army, and now Afghanistan is a modern country the same way that Germany and Japan is. That's, not impossible, but how long are you willing to sit there and how much money are you willing to spend? How many people are you willing to throw at it until that gets accomplished? What, 50 years? We were there for 20 years. So how much longer is it going to take? What, another 5 years? Another 10 years? Right? Another 50 years? Permanently forever? Should we just stay there forever? Fuck it. That's just, annex Afghanistan. They're now the 51st state. Give them voting rights. Is this what you're proposing? Like, what's your solution? Right? See, I always hear plenty of criticism from the right wing, from the conservatives, from the Republicans, plenty of criticism, right? Plenty of you did this wrong, shit like that. Well, then tell me what's the right way to go about it. What? Send 100,000 troops there? 1 million troops? Should we just kill every person in Afghanistan? You know? What if we kill every single person there? Does that mean we win? Right? Like, what's your solution? How long do we stay there? How much money do we spend there? Right? We've already the low end is $1 trillion. So what's the right amount of money to spend there? what, 2 trillion, 3 trillion, 4 trillion, right? You know, there are people here right now that get sick from COVID and then have to go to the hospital. And they're there for fucking 2 weeks straight. They get out and they owe the hospital $200,000. Okay. Something ridiculous like that. That's what's going on in this country right now. Why should I spend, like let's imagine that you're the president, right? Let's just say that they elect you president tomorrow. What benefit do you have to spend $1 trillion on people in Afghanistan, right? Half a world away when there are other people in this country right now whose entire lives get ruined because of a hospital stay. Shouldn't they be getting that money? Right? What do you really care about? I guess that's what it is. It's like, okay, yeah, they blew up the World Trade Center. Right. That's bad. Let's prevent them from doing that again. Do we need to occupy an entire fucking country in order to stop that? Do we need to have 100,000 troops there for 20 years in order to stop some buildings from being blown up in the United States? Maybe we could spend that money in a better way, right? Maybe we don't need to occupy somebody else's country. Maybe we don't need to send drone strikes to go blow up weddings and shit like that in other countries in order to stop terrorism, right? Because that's what I'm getting here. This is what I'm getting from the conservatives and the Republicans and all that is that we should just kill everybody and spend as much money as it takes and and fuck the people at home. Who cares? You can't afford your health insurance? Too fucking bad, get a job. That's your solution. Well, fuck that. That's a dumbass solution. Sorry, dude. You know, I don't mean to be a dick here, but we tried that shit. We tried your solution for 20 years. It didn't work. Think of something else. Come back when you have a better solution, right? And this is America. You have every right to complain and say whatever you want. It's a free country. You can say whatever the fuck you want, right? But just don't feed me this shit that he made a wrong decision here. Don't try to tell me that we should have just let this go on forever and ever and ever. You know, 20 years, that's the majority of my adult life. I mean, holy fucking shit. That's like, it was what, almost 21 years. Well, okay, not the majority of my adult life, I guess. I'm a little older than that, but still, it's a long fucking time. That's longer than most of my audience has probably been alive. I mean, you know, seriously, dude, like it's at what point do you basically say it's not worth it anymore? You know, and that's the thing. You don't have to look at it like, oh, we lost a war. It's like there's no fucking no. Okay, it's not even like that either. It's more like, well, it just became unsustainable, and you know, it's what it is. That's basically that's the truth, right? Look at it objectively. It's unsustainable. We should not be wasting our money there. We should not be wasting our time there. You know, it's not worth sending more people to get shot at and paralyzed and have bombs dropped on them and shit like that so that George Bush's friends could make a shitload of money, right? It needs to end. So that's what I want to hear. Get me some give me some solutions, man. I don't know. Let's see. Okay, I think we're gonna have to end this pretty soon here. Uh, but let's read a few more. Video Matt presents low. This guy just repeats what the mainstream says. Yeah, well, the mainstream is not wrong in this. If you have some better information, like maybe if you have some guys on the ground there or something that you can introduce me to, please let me know because I would love to actually get like the perspective of some soldiers that were there. That would be great. I would love to hear that, but not everything is a conspiracy. That's the other thing, right? It's like this is what the mainstream media says. Well, maybe consider that the mainstream media is telling the truth once in a while. It's not all like backroom deals and shit with like cigar smoking fucking fat cats creating propaganda to like, I don't know what, fool you into not getting a COVID vaccine. It's not all like that, you know. So anyway, let me see here. Watching a video from 10 years ago should help us understand what's happening 3 days ago. Lol. Um, well, that was to illustrate the state of the Afghan army and why they gave up so early, right? That's what we were dealing with. That video, yeah, it was 10 years old, right? The situation obviously has not improved very much since then. Because if it had improved, then they would have put up a fight. They didn't put up a fight. They surrendered immediately, right? And I think that kind of illustrated what we were dealing with. You know, maybe that was, but, that kind of illustrated why we were there for 20 years, right? Because the Afghan army was not taking it seriously. The people that were in the Afghan army were just, you know, kids doing drugs, fucking around, not really giving a shit. And sure enough, the nanosecond that the Americans leave, they fucking fold like they fold like a fucking card table. So I think it was very relevant. I don't know. I mean, if you don't think so, that's fine. But you know, show me like where the Afghan army actually stood up for itself because it didn't. I mean, shit. This is reality, dude. I mean, I appreciate your opinion there, but I don't know. I think I'm right when it comes to that one, at least. I think it's very relevant to show that. Anyway, moving on. Let's see. Some more video. Matt presents. They never had a desire to fight. It was planned the whole time because they didn't get born into a country of freedom or idea of freedom. Um, I can actually agree a little bit with that. But I don't think it doesn't have to do with the ideal of freedom, right? I don't think so. Everybody wants to be free. Everybody around the entire world in every country, you know, and freedom means different things to different people, right? When you're a religious fundamentalist, freedom means obeying exactly what your religion tells you to do. That's what freedom means, right? And, there are plenty of people in Afghanistan right now who are not religious fundamentalists. Those are the people trying to leave, you know. I don't know if you remember way back in 2002, once the, Taliban was routed, there were videos of people celebrating in the streets in Afghanistan, shaving their beards off, for example, right? Because the Taliban forced you to wear a beard. You know, there's nothing like there's nothing like somebody forcing you to do something to make you appreciate freedom. Okay. So no, these people, it's not like they're culturally predisposed into being, you know, religious, you know, fundamentalist, Shia or law, whatever. It's not like it's like a fucking like genetically like predisposition, It's just this is the culture they lived in, right? And if you think about it, it's like, just think about that choice yourself. What would you rather have? Would you rather have bombs dropping on you, or would you rather have, fucking let's say in this country, you know, the Billy Graham people be in charge of the country, or would you rather have perpetual war? Just imagine that's your choice, you know. Drone strike, blowing up your sister's wedding, or, maybe these assholes like I don't know, force you to go to church on Sunday. What choice are you going to take? Right? That's really what it comes down to. So, anyway, surface. Pretty much all insurgency style wars can't be ended unless you literally commit genocide. Yep, exactly. I think that was the point I was trying to get to. It's like we could stop them if we kill all of them, you know. If we were to just go in and bomb an entire city and just fucking wipe out the entire population, then yeah, you can stop it. But, that's not how modern wars are fought, and people in this country wouldn't stand for that either, war crimes, war atrocities, stuff like that. So we don't go and destroy the entire population of a country. We don't do things like firebomb entire cities anymore, like in World War II, or drop nukes on fucking you know, we don't do that. So it was fought door to door, right? The counterinsurgency was fought door to door, and that just breeds more fucking insurgents, right? When you go and you kick down somebody's door and you fucking hold them you drag people away to get questioned, and then they disappear for weeks at a time if they ever come back at all. Do you think that that's going to make that family like you? Do you think they're going to want to support you when that shit happens? Like, let's say you're just sitting there minding your own business, eating dinner, suddenly your door fucking blows off the handle, and then some flashbang grenades shoot in, fuck everybody up, maybe some tear gas, right? Then a bunch of American soldiers come in speaking a language that you don't speak, telling you to lay on the ground and shit, kicking down your fucking you know, dressers and stuff like that, knocking over furniture, grabbing your father and putting him handcuffs on him and then just taking him away and then just leaving, and then you have no idea where he went, no idea where he is. You don't know if he's alive or dead, right? And then maybe if you're lucky, they let him go. If you're not lucky, then he gets carted off to some CIA black site to be fucking waterboarded. Let's not forget that too, torturing and shit people, torturing people and shit for 20 years. We have the Bush people to thank for that one also, right? This is what fucking happened. Are you gonna then turn around and be like, "Oh, I like the Americans. Oh, I want freedom." Yeah, right. If that's what freedom means, you know. All right, freedom. Don't give me this shit, dude. I'm sorry. It's bullshit. It's bullshit, dude. I'm sorry, man. I would make that choice too. I would rather be forced to go to church on Sunday, forced to pray, rather than have to live in those types of conditions, right? And I'm not defending the Taliban. I'm not saying the Taliban were, the heroes here. I'm saying there are no heroes in war. I'm saying war is bad for everybody. It should be avoided at all costs, right? We should not be getting in the middle of wars because our fucking president said God told him to, right? Seriously. So, anyway, Lewis the Hedgehog. Let's see. We'll read a few more and then I got to end this because it's already past one. Lots and lots of comments, though. Let's see. Lewis the Hedgehog. We did a better job creating a democracy in Iraq. I know this because their prime minister was someone who fought against us. Yeah, that one seemed to work a little better. That it still took decades for that to come together, and we actually still have a military base there, and we still have troops. So, you know, I think one thing that helped there was that you know, the Iraqi country, they were already somewhat mostly modernized before, we invaded there. And even though there were some major blunders there as well, like for example, they disarmed the entire army. They shouldn't have done that. There were some major blunders there that they could have done a lot better. But yeah, it seems like they had a better outcome. But also remember there are still troops in Iraq as well. So who's to say what would happen if we were to leave immediately? I don't know. I mean, we also had some other things happening there that it's not exactly apples to apples, Iraq and Afghanistan. There was the ISIS that started in Iraq and stuff like this. So, and that's another thing as well. The Taliban actually fought against ISIS. Let's not forget about that, right? The Taliban and ISIS are actually enemies. So, you know, people who are trying to claim that they're gonna harbor terrorists again, not that cut and dry, folks. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I would say yes. Iraq seems to be more of a success story, you know, than Afghanistan for sure. But I mean, was it worth it? I guess that's what it all comes down to. Was it worth it? I don't know. I can't answer that question. Anyway, thank you all so much. I think we're gonna go ahead and end this. I skipped your comments. What other comments there, Dynacat? Let me see. I don't want to skip your best comments. Um, Dynacat loves me. It's pretty much like a mafia state, but it's been that way longer than there's been any mafia. What, in Afghanistan? Yeah, Afghanistan doesn't work like that. Doesn't matter who has a government in Kabul. It's always the same tribal warlords who run things locally. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of. I mean, to be honest, I don't really know what it was like before the Soviet invasion. So I don't. I'm not exactly sure. I know that it was a little more modernized there before the Soviets invaded, but I'm not really sure about their form of government. I'd have to look that up. So, I mean, conceivably, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to, you know, become a modern country. It's like they kind of were one, and then they were just bombed back into fucking the 6th century, you know. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really. I mean, I guess now it's, yeah, exactly what you're saying. It's all run by warlords and shit like that. I would really have to read more about that myself before I could comment on it myself, you know, to any degree. But it sounds about right to me. Um, anyway, guys, yeah, I think I gotta end this. We're already hitting 118. Okay, guys, thank you all so much. You know, everybody for joining. Phil, Fatman TV, thanks for joining, man. Good to see ya. Lewis the Hedgehog, good as always. Adversary Fandom 2, Dynacat loves me. You guys are great. Good to see you each time. Cephas, great. Good to see you. Even you, Video Matt Presents, thank you for joining also. Really appreciate it. You know, and I really appreciate it. I mean, even if we don't see eye to eye all the time on these things, I still like hearing from you guys. I still like seeing the comments. You know, I really don't mind comments that challenge me, and I try not to be a jerk myself when confronted with stuff like that. So if I'm coming off too much like an a-hole, please tell me. you know, but I really do appreciate it. I really do, even from you. Video Matt Presents, giving me comments that comment that challenge my opinions. I actually appreciate that as well. So anyway, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and end this. It's getting a little late, but before I go, as always, I have to give you my ending speech here. So let's see. I have here my SD shop. If you guys like what I do and you want to support me, please consider checking me out on SD, maybe buying something. I put this one up here. Uh, this is the one that we drew over the stream, right? So I made a print out of this. So if you guys remember, right? Oh wait, that looks bad. If you guys remember, I made this is like 4 or 5 streams ago. So you can if you want to buy that, it's here now. It's available for you. So anyway, yeah, if you like what I do, please check me out there. And let's see, I also have a DeviantArt site here. If you want to see more of my artwork, you can download the stuff for free. Here's the same print. If you just want like a digital copy of it, you can just feel free to just download it. It's cool. And I also have, my web comic and that kind of thing. So please check me out on, you know, DeviantArt if you want to see more of my artwork. I'll just put that down there as well. And then I also have a Patreon, which is, great as always. I actually do have a couple of people giving me, signing up on my Patreon. So that's great. If you want to do like a recurring thing, something like that, please check me out there. And I also have another YouTube channel if you want to see me talk about toys and video games and movies, that kind of thing, non-political content. You know, um, please check me out on UCD videos. Anyway, but that's all I got, folks. Thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you for listening to me rant and rave for 2 hours. I really appreciate it. And I really do read all of your comments here. Even if I don't get to your comment in the stream, I read all of them afterwards. So appreciate it. You guys are the best, and I will see you next week at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Adios, folks.